Morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? It's been a long week, so my voice is starting to go just a little bit, so you might have to bear with me. Can we get the slides up? Maybe. I could probably just ad-lib most of the talk at this stage, but the slides would be useful. Oh, sorry, man. It's great, thanks. Okay, so we're here to talk about how to move beyond change sets and really bring in some release management and see success that way. So I'm the CEO of a company called GearSet, and this is kind of the life that we've been living for the last 2 years. We go out and speak to customers about how they currently manage their releases and try and bring in processes to improve it, and GearSet supports them through that. Just a sort of, I know it's a spectrum from like no code to low code to like Uber ISV, but sort of show of hands, sort of who's like an admin, okay, and a developer, and sort of manages a team of people and doesn't do any real work. Okay, good. Yeah. No, I just wanted to ask that, so I want to get a sense, because obviously your deployment challenges change, depend on what stage your project's at and sort of what your day-to-day job is. So I'll try and tailor the talk. We've got pretty much an even mix of everybody there, so I'll tailor the talk to that. I'll be hanging around afterwards if you want to ask questions, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or the websites there at the bottom, gearset.com. So the agenda for this morning, go through what sort of the best deployment management for you. So what is release management and how does it affect you? What's the current state of your environments? So obviously we're probably mostly existing Salesforce customers, and you've already got an investment in sandboxes and things, and understand the state of that's like a good starting point. As we start to scale up our Salesforce investment, we'll tend to start working in teams, bringing admins and developers working together, and how do we do that effectively. Release management, obviously, as a concept, affects every platform. So what challenges are unique to Salesforce? How do we make sure that what we're doing is correct? So where does testing fit into all of it? And sort of, I hate this phrase, but the gold standard, or once you really do start to fly with release management, what does that look like? So let's start off here. The first thing to sort of decide is that release management, there's no one way to do it. There's no one way to manage your deployments and manage your releases. So the most important thing is to take some time to reflect on what's actually causing you pain. Like what is the part of your process that you want to improve, and then find a way through that rather than just choosing what people tell you should. So things like, are you dependent on a single person at the moment? So let's say you think you've got a pretty solid release management. Is that just because this one person acts as a gatekeeper and does everything? Are you empowering the whole team to do it? So does releasing sort of cause you stress, or does it cause your schedules to slip? We see a lot of people, again, that they come and tell us their release management is pretty good. We sort of kind of got it under control, and you dig in, and it's because they spend a week doing development and they leave aside 3 days to do the deployment, just sort of building that change set, or working with Jenkins or something. It just eats a lot of time. And all of this then, we're trying to build value for our customers and our stakeholders. So are you making full use of the platform? Is there things like, Process Builder is an amazing feature, and are you avoiding using some of those things because releasing them is just too difficult? So I'm going to jump over. This is a pretty demo-heavy session, so I'm going to jump over. First of all, actually, no, I think I've got one more slide. So the first thing to work out really is what is the current state of your environments. So you've got a bunch of sandboxes, you've got a lot of investment, you may have started to use source control, and are you using those effectively, and what is the current state? Are you confident that you could refresh? So people tend to have these sandboxes that they become very attached to because they're too afraid of what's in there, or if they refreshed, what they would lose. And basically, what is the difference between your dev and production environment? Is there stuff in production that was made there and sort of never documented and hasn't made it through to the dev workflow where it's being captured? And likewise, is there a bunch of stuff sitting in your development environment that somebody worked on that hasn't made it through to production? So I'm going to jump over to my first demo. So as I said, I'm from GearSet. To get started with GearSet, you just go to gearset.com. We're also on the App Exchange. You can find us there if you'd like. There's nothing to install in your orgs. It's just really, really easy to get started. It's like 3 clicks. So go to gearset.com. Click Login. And that bounces you over to our app, as long as the Wi-Fi holds up, which it has. Fantastic. You can then either log in with your Salesforce credentials or log in with your Google credentials. I'm going to log in with Google today. This just does the little OAuth dance and bounces you over to our app. So you can see, very, very easy to get started. This is the main screen for GearSet. So you can compare any 2 sources of metadata. So that can be a Salesforce organization compared with a Salesforce organization. Local files. So if you're using something like the Force.com IDE or Maven's Mate, and you just want to say, hey, what is the difference between my local files and my org? It's really easy to do that. Our source control. So natively built in, we've got support for GitHub, GitHub Enterprise, Bitbucket, and GitLab. So sort of all the big hosted providers. So I'm going to just, for this demo, do a comparison between 2 Salesforce orgs. So the first one I've got is a fake dev environment, and the other is my staging environment, which I think is this one. You can then choose what types of metadata to compare. So if you've been doing a bunch of work on custom objects or profiles and you know exactly what you want to drill down into, then you can do that, or just leave it at the default. I'll then kick off the comparison. And what's happening behind the scenes here is we're using the same Salesforce APIs that Salesforce themselves use. It's the metadata API and the tooling API. We're grabbing all of the metadata from the source organization, all of the metadata from the target organization, and then we're doing some clever stuff behind the scenes to build up an understanding of that metadata. And that allows us to do a few things, which I'll dig into now. The first is that we show you things group into a few categories. So we group all of your metadata into things that are changed. So that is, they exist in both my development and staging environments, but there's a difference between them. And here you can see that line-by-line diff. So if I look at something like account source is a standard field on the account object. It's a pick list field. And here we can see that we've broken it up. If I just zoom in a little bit, we've broken it up so that we show you just the custom field. So if you've done a bunch of work on something else in the account object and you want to get ready to deploy just a small fraction, then we do that. And we do that for, this is like a simple example, but we do that for complicated things as well, where you might have a profile with incredibly complex relationships, and we'll break that up so you can deploy that field, all of the field level security, all of that kind of thing, without affecting any of the rest of the profile changes that might not be quite ready to go yet. We show you new objects. So these are things that exist in your development environment that haven't yet been migrated across. A bit of a difference from change sets. I don't have any set up here, but we do support deleted objects as well, so destructive changes. And that's just out of the box. You just see the exact same thing here, and line-by-line diff showing in it. And finally, we show you all objects. So if you are a change sets user, you're probably familiar with clicking through lots of pages, and it's not terribly fun. Well, with GearSet, you can just filter down to whatever you need to really, really fast. It's all on one page. As I said, we build up intelligence. So here we can see this profile. Obviously, one of the more complex objects in Salesforce. It doesn't live alone. It's got lots of dependencies. So when you come to deploy that, GearSet will automatically detect all of the dependencies. And we do that for some very advanced cases as well. So things like a formula field that depends on another object, we'll work all that out for you. Let's see if I'll just go through and do the deployment here. So if I want to do the deployment, I just select the changes I want to deploy, in this case this pick list, select next, at which point GearSet will do a bunch of analysis. This is where we're checking for those missing dependencies. We're checking for version mismatches between Salesforce environments, history tracking, multi-currency, really just trying to work out, will your deployment succeed? Now we're ready to go. We give it a deployment note. This is a Dreamforce demo. And that will live with the deployment now. So that'll be tracked in our history. That'll be tracked if you're using source control, all of that kind of thing. I can go ahead and do the deployment. So this will deploy directly to the org. So there's no more of that creating an outbound change set and then like logging into the other org and accepting it and sort of hoping it made it across in the meantime. It's one button to deploy it. Not quite ready to deploy yet, so I'll just do a validation. With the validation, we're going to use, again, those same Salesforce APIs. We don't bypass anything. We just upload it to Salesforce. Salesforce verifies that the package is good, it can be applied to your org, runs all of the tests, and you're good to go. If I wanted to, I could now deploy that directly, or I can schedule it. So although this package is valid and can be applied correctly, let's say it's disruptive to my end users. So it changes something they rely on. We have to do a little bit of training first. I can schedule that to happen out of hours, so I don't have to come into the office and do that on a Friday evening or a Saturday morning. So to do that, I would just choose, where did my mouse go? I would just choose the date, so let's say Saturday, and the time. Let's go for early in the day when I'll be on a plane to London. And when it does the deployment, just email me. And because this is kind of an important change, also email the team. Press save, and we're good to go. That's now saved and ready to deploy, so that'll deploy when the time's right. Okay, so you can see it's really easy to just work out what the difference between all your different environments are. So now that you've sort of understood the difference between your environments, it's important to be able to work effectively as a team. So you tend to not be doing deployments or development in isolation. So you need to work effectively as a team. And any change management process, whatever you do, has to take that into account. So you might have something where everyone's a specialist. You might have somebody that's particularly good at Visualforce, or particularly good at Lightning, or particularly good at Apex. But ultimately, you're all working towards the same goal. You're all working as part of the same sprint. And you need to be able to build a single package, a single thing that everyone can contribute to, and then that can be deployed in one go. The way you would do that in GearSet is with draft packages. So when you build your package, let's say I grab these two things, I can save a draft deployment. So a draft deployment is just something that I'm getting ready to deploy, but I'm not quite ready with yet. I can give this a name. So this is end of sprint 17, which for some reason is the number I always choose. So when I press save, there'll probably be lots of sprint 17s. We then have a URL, so I can give this URL to my colleague. They can go and add their components to the package before it gets reviewed by the release manager, or that's always available at any time over on the draft deployments, where you can see I've got a bunch here. So this one, in fact, was created by my colleague Ollie, but I don't have access to his org. This one created by my colleague Matt. I can click View Draft, and I'll be able to see that all of the things that he's got in his package ready to go, and then I can make additions to that and save it. Sometimes you find yourself like sort of playing whack-a-mole, and this is one of the things that's really unique about Salesforce is that it gives us a lot of flexibility in how we arrange our teams. So in a traditional software project, you have these very rigid, development, staging, UAT, production. It all gets documented. It all goes through a flow like that. But one of the reasons we all love Salesforce is that you can make changes directly in production. And that's a great power that we've got from Salesforce, that we can do this. And you don't want to have to give up that empowerment, to adopt release management. You don't want to have to go back to the old days of very rigid pipelines. So with GearSet, you can use our production monitoring. So with production monitoring, you add a new job where you give it a name. So it can be any org, but it's typically production. So production monitoring. You choose the org that you want to monitor. As I said, it's typically a production environment, but I'm just going to choose this dev environment for now. You choose the metadata that you want to monitor, and every night we'll scan your org, compare that metadata to how it existed the day before, and if there's a difference, we'll notify you. So here you can see we'll notify you on every run, or only when it's changed. We'll send you an email, or this is probably something you want to send to your whole team. We can send you a text message if it was particularly important. Slack, which we use for our group chat, or Chatter. And it's all about just surfacing that information so that as changes are made in production, that's okay, that's fine, as long as those changes get reflected in the back in devs so that they don't cause you problems later. So if we take one that's been running for a little while, I can see this has been running for the last 6 months or so. We can see the metadata as it existed every single night for the last 6 months. As you can see, this org doesn't change a whole lot. It's mostly identical. But back here, there was a change. So on that day, I would have got an email saying, hey, Kevin, your production environment has changed. You should go and take a look. That email will have a link directly to this page where we're going to show you the exact metadata that changed and who changed. So when it loads up, I can see that Ollie, my colleague, made a change to this custom field back in August. Let's say Ollie's a good developer and I like the work he's done there. I can just now make sure that that's documented and taken back to my development environment. Or if it turns out that Ollie's done some work there he shouldn't have, then I can always just roll that back. So it's important to understand that Salesforce is a unique environment and that it encourages production change. That's part of the power of the platform, and that's okay, but just have the information surfaced so that as end users and admins are making changes, that's captured and put back into development. So the next thing to think about for release management is testing. So obviously you want to make sure that any changes that we make are correct. Our production change is going to affect my code coverage, so we've probably all been in the scenario where someone's changed a validation rule and things start to go wrong. How do we protect against that? And will I be able to release when I need to? So again, we have teams that spend a lot of time doing really great development, and then they set aside just way too much time at the end to do releases. And what we want to get to is a point where you just reduce the time that you're spending on that and make sure that when you release, it actually works. So you don't want to build that package, build that change set, and then discover your tests are failing because of a change made 2 weeks ago by somebody else, and nobody can remember anymore quite why that change was made. So I'll show you our test monitoring. So our test monitoring is completely free. Some of the stuff I've shown you here in GearSet is part of our paid-for product, but the test monitoring is totally free. It works in much the same way as our change monitoring. You give the job a name, choose the org, the tests you want to monitor, typically a production environment. You choose your code coverage threshold, so you might, you know at 75% you're going to have problems, but you might as a team agree 85% is sort of closer to where you want to be. And then if you start to drift below 85% down to towards 80, as a team you sort of say, hey, we need to get our code coverage back. So I can set my code coverage percentage, and finally I can choose my notification settings. So whatever way I want to get told. Again, typically this is a team thing. You're trying to just surface as much information to the team as possible so you can make those decisions quickly and at the right time. So here we see one that's been running for a little while. I can jump into this. I can see the tests are currently passing, so that's good. But there's a period of time yesterday where the tests were failing. So again, on that day, I'll have been sent an email. It'll say, hey, Kevin, your production tests have started failing. I can jump over. I typically don't care all that much about passing tests. Passing tests are good. Don't really need to think about it. What I'm interested in is the failing tests. So for some reason, this test has started failing. I've got a good message. I've got a stack trace. And now I'm ready to go and actually fix that problem. So I've been told that my tests have started failing when they actually start failing, instead of 2 weeks later when I'm trying to get a release out. So again, I sort of hate this phrase, but as you do start to develop your process, where do you eventually end up? What does great look like, and sort of what are the best teams that we work with? How do they handle their releases? Well, it's kind of very similar to a lot of other platforms. You do go for that isolation. So everybody uses an isolated either dev sandbox, now we get lots of those through our licenses, or else a development environment like a DE org. They tend to share changes via source control. You then automatically pick up those changes from source control, and you continuously integrate them into an org to make sure that everybody, as they're changing things, you're able to verify that those changes work correctly together. You'll then tend to do probably a manual deployment to UAT, just to verify that for the users that they're getting the functionality that they want. And what this means is that by the time you come to deploy to production, life's sweet. At this stage, there's no problems, and you're ready to go. So typically, setting up this kind of flow has historically been very tricky, and things are getting better. Salesforce are putting a lot of investment into making this better with things like Salesforce DX and Scratch orgs. So that's very exciting. I'll show you how this works with GearSet as well. So I have set up previously a dev org where I've made some changes, and a CI org where I'm going to test those changes. I've got all of this committed to GitHub, so I've just got a repo there, but you can use whatever source control environment you want. And I'm going to go ahead and make a change. So let's refresh Salesforce and get our nice fireworks. I'm going to modify that same account source field and just add a new pick list value. So, I don't know, this is, let's say, Dreamforce leads. Save that. So I've now made that change in my dev environment, and I want to share that with the rest of my team going via the source control system. So in GearSet, I'll just choose my CI, or my dev environment. Instead of comparing to instead of comparing to an actual org this time, I'm going to compare to that GitHub repository. So I'm just going to choose that one, and I'm going to choose the master branch. Again, instead of comparing all of my metadata, because I don't really need to do that, I don't source control some things, like I don't really store any of my reports, for example, in source control. So I've used this pre-saved filter. We'll kick off that comparison. So this time, we're going to grab all of the metadata using the metadata API from the source org, and then from the target org, we're just going to grab the GitHub repo. But we'll compare it the exact same way, so you can see you still get that nice line-by-line diff. So the complexities of Git are hidden from you. You don't need to think about, all the Git command line tools and all that sort of stuff. So I'll just grab this change, this account source. I can see here what's happening. I'll press next. We'll check the deployment to make sure you're committing everything that you need. This is my commit Dreamforce. I press deploy to actually send that across to GitHub. So this time, instead of uploading it to Salesforce, we're just going to prepare all those files and commit them to GitHub for you. So then in a second or two, we can see that that's done. If I go to GitHub and look at my commits, then here we can see this is my commit at Dreamforce. I can jump in there, I can see exactly what's changed, and I can start to have that discussion with my team at that stage. I can start to use pull requests. I can start to bring all the collaboration features in from these products. The final stage, if we just jump over quickly to our deck, when I've now pushed the change to the source control, I want something to automatically pick that up and build it in a continuous integration environment to make sure that the changes that I've made work properly with my colleagues. So GearSet has you covered on that as well, where we have our CI. So this is configured by choosing the name, choosing the source for your CI. So you can do Salesforce org to Salesforce org. So if you guys aren't using source control yet, but you still want to have continuous integration, then you can do that, and we'll just do it on a schedule sync for you. But for this demo, I was using GitHub. So here is the one that I configured earlier. So this is going from GitHub to my CI org. So when I pushed that code to GitHub a moment ago, GitHub will have called out to GearSet to say, hey, some of the metadata has changed. You should go off and do a deployment. And there it is. So hopefully this timestamp will match. So 8:54. Yep. So a moment ago, when I pushed that change, we actually then automatically grabbed the change from source control from GitHub and pushed it over to an org. So you know that it's going to work. I can grab the deployment report that tells me exactly what that was. So here we can see all of the things that changed, the account source, the lead source, and all of the things that didn't change. So you can sort of see there in about 3-4 minutes, you've went complete end-to-end CI without having to think about any of the complexities of that sort of thing. So some of the key takeaways I want you to leave with. I think the best release management process is the one that actually helps you see success. So whatever it is that's currently causing you pain, that's the thing you should be trying to fix. So rather than trying to bring in, a very heavy process, just enable your teams to do whatever it is. Don't bend your process to somebody else's version of right. So whenever a vendor or an expert or somebody tells you, hey, this is what you absolutely should be doing, just really think about, what is actually causing you pain. Visibility into your orgs and surfacing that work in progress is, just very, very effective for a team. So you can sort of see what my colleagues are working on. You can see how that's going to affect me. All of that stuff just helps you work better together. And then once you have an effective process, once you have something that's nice and stable and works for you and your team and your skill set, then start to use automation and get something that really works. So we're downstairs in the developer forest. Happy to have a chat. Happy to have a chat here afterwards if you like. But otherwise, thank you very much.